Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode. In this episode, it's a woodworking episode. And yay! In this episode, I'm going to be showing you how I'm going to fix an old cutting board. And when I mean old, it's like 7 years old. But let me show you what's wrong and how I'm going to do it. So here's our old cutting board. We just washed it, that's why it looks a little wet. But if you notice, it has a little bit of wear and tear on it. Doesn't look like it does on the edges because it needs to be oiled. But the main culprit is this crack. I got to fix that crack. And the only way I can do it is to operate. One other thing is we busted off that corner. So I need to fix that. So my first step of what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut the cutting board right where that crack is. Just cut it on the table saw. Then I'm going to flatten it so I can glue it back together. But I'm going to add something to it. And I'll show you why after I do it. So let's go. Let's get cutting. And before you start, remember boys and girls, there is no better safety precaution than to wear these safety glasses. Okay, switch you around. So we have it cut apart. I joined each edge. The joiner doesn't like it, so it doesn't make a super smooth finish on it, but it should be good enough for gluing. I can't just glue this back. Well, you could. You could just glue it back together, but I'm not going to. Two reasons. One, when I cut this, I took a little bit of material off. So now these two squares are not going to be the same as the normal squares. You're going to notice that a little bit. And two, I want to put a little something in there. If I have to kind of modify something I've done before, I'm going to add a little some to it. So I'm going to cut a certain piece of wood, put it in there, and at the same time, I'm going to address that corner, that busted corner. I'm going to do that. So you can see where I cut my crack and where I cut my corner. I added 2 pieces of wood in there. I had to add some wood in there because, like I said, these 2 squares are not the same size anymore. That's not the same size as the remainder of the squares. And I didn't want my board to get any smaller. And since I'm doing stuff, I wanted to add a little color to it. So I'm adding this nice piece of purple heart in there. So he's all ready to glue up. So the next step is to glue him up. So here is the board all glued up. I just had an eclectic blend of clamps I used because, well, it's kind of my thing. He's glued up. It's definitely not pretty. So the next step is we flatten him out in the sander. So let's go to the sander. Hello. We're in the wood shop. We are going to be sanding the board down on our drum sander. So let me show you what that's going to look like. We have our little 1632 Plus Perform X drum sander. And there's our board. We're going to be sanding one side, then flipping it over to sand the other side to get it nice and flat. I have 150 grit sandpaper in there, which is not ideal. I should use 80. I'm just way too lazy to change it out. So there you go. I'm not going to film this because it's going to be sanding. It's about the most boring thing a woodworker has to do. So you'll see it when it's all done through the magic of video editing. Well, we're partway through the sanding process. And if you notice, so far it's sanding on the edges because right here, that's pretty much where we do most of the work on a cutting board. So when you sand it, I'm sanding it flat. I have to go until this is nice and flat. Another little thing, this side is all done. If I get close on it, you can still see some old knife marks here and there. I might keep sanding until those go away, but in real life, nobody's gonna see that because you kind of look at a cutting board from this distance. And once you put the oil on it, it go away. So about 70 more passes and it'll be good. Well, it's done through the drum sander. It's looking really good on each side. I forgot to do the video editing magic part. Oh, this is what it looks like. I just have to address the longies there and on the ends. So I have to address the edges. I'm gonna do that on ye old bandsaw and then the belt sander, the big belt sander, the stationary belt sander, yeah. So I'm gonna do that. Won't take me long, then I'll show you what it looks like when it's done. I should look in the camera, not over here. Okay? The dust collector is winding down. I addressed my edges, I addressed my little longy longs, and now it is back to being a square. So the one last remaining machine step is to do the horrible, horrible orbital sander. The bane of every woodworker's existence. That's what we're doing next, and that's where I'm going to spend most of my time, and I'll show you what it looks like when it's done. And here it is after 220 grit. Looking at the camera, I don't think anybody's going to be able to tell the difference between 150 and 220. And then 150 and a drum, but I can tell. I know there's some knife marks that I did not take care of on the drum sander. And it's going to be fine. It's going to be fine. Don't worry about it. I didn't want the board to get so thin that it's unusable, so I just left them. Now the fun part, I get to do the mineral oil. And here is the cutting board all done, glistening in the daylight. And I say daylight because it's Wisconsin. We have daylight, we don't really get sunlight. So with this many steps, you too can redo your own cutting board. You just kind of have to find a full wood shop to do it, but I was thinking you could do all of this with hand tools and sandpaper, but if you have an old cutting board that's in need of some love, you can totally refinish it and save it and still use it. You just might have to do some modifications on it. So I hope you enjoyed this little video on how to refinish a cutting board. So we'll see you next time, everybody. Bye!